Since the dawn of Tabletop, there have been many systems, and in that, one rose to be the most adaptable system. The generic universal roleplay system. And now some GURPS nerds are here to use their knowledge to help you with your games. Welcome to the Generic Universal Podcast Series. Welcome back to the Generic Universal Podcast Series, this podcast for everybody in every game possible. I'm your host, Decided Liam.
And I am Jellyfish, the guy that makes all the GURPS sheets.
Yes. So, we're finally here. We're finally back on the Decided channel doing GURPS-related content. Are you happy, everyone? I sure hope so you are. I really do.
Yeah, I would hope so.
It's been a busy road. I've been very busy with many different hobbies, many different things, and it's time to get back to one of my passion projects, talking about GURPS. But this series is not just going to be talking about GURPS alone. No. We're kind of system agnostic here. Of course, GURPS is going to be in the forefront of this conversation. We'll still bring up GURPS and GURPS mechanics. Do not worry. But we want to also help any people with any campaign conversations to move forward with their stories, whether they're a player or that they're a GM or DM or whatever. Any way that we could help the vast majority of Tabletop is what we're here for. Anything you'd like to add, Jolly?
Man, sorry, I'm not a big personality, so it's probably going to take a bit for me to figure out what to say for these.
Don't worry, my friend. We're just getting started out. I've just been doing this talking online for so long that it's became quite natural to me. Which is funny, because when I actually do regular Decided recordings, I fail to do so. Whatever. Anyway, let's get on to our main topic here. So how this series will work is that we'll each of our hosts, if we have more than us two, will have each a topic to talk about in the podcast. And then we'll go on to community questions, and then that will pretty much cover the amount of time. So first off, we'll actually do my first topic. I'd like to discuss, and this has been something I've been ruminating over for quite some time now, open world adventures. And how they just kill momentum in campaigns.
Yeah, it can feel that way sometimes, yeah.
So I've been, I keep on, thinking about, open world adventures sound fantastic. And GURPS is a great example of this. GURPS has that natural, I want the whole world open to the entire populace. So how do I make that available to everyone? The key answer is I don't think you can. I don't think that there's a good way to do an open world campaign.
I think the thing about open world adventures is you have to both plan a lot, but also not plan too much. It becomes a lot more about improvisation, because you aren't going to be able to accurately predict what the players are going to do or where they're going to go. They're going to say, oh, I want to go here today, and you'll just have to go, well, okay, here's some cliff notes of what would go on in this place, here's what this character might do in theory, and then just see how the players interact with the world from there, which that tends to end up being a lot of extra work, I will admit.
Yeah, I think one of the key points on this situation, I just want to point out, I got thunderstorms raining and now, ambulance driving, so, yeah, that'll be fun. Anyway, back to topic. If it comes down to open world campaigns, I think they could only work if it's a one-on-one scenario. When you have a single other person that you're just playing with, they have free reign to really dive into the world they want to play. So that makes sense, right? Like, a single person as the other player is perfect for that kind of event. But once you have more than one other person other than the GM, then you have like this disconnect mentally from all players involved. If one random open world thing happens that the other players did not agree upon, they mentally disconnect and get bored of your campaign.
I guess I can see that. From my experience with an open world campaign, system was Pokemon Trainers United. It's still a work in progress system, I think. My biggest problem with that one was just doing enough content to last the whole session. Like I could follow more or less what each player wanted to do, and in some cases I had to make stuff up because they didn't actually know what they wanted to do. But it really just came down to there's just a lot more to track when you don't have a set path.
Yeah.
But, that's why you need to have good improvisation skills for that sort of thing.
I don't know. I think it also has to like rely on the players to also have good improv. Because I played like open world campaigns with multiple like new players, and then they feel so like I don't want to even like talk because I feel like I'm stepping on other people's toes in the game.
No, I get it. To be fair, with my situation, my game, all three players and me we were all in a group for a while, so we were pretty used to that sort of thing.
Right, and I think that's really like the most that works. But then again, like I say, I think it just kills momentum in general. I think more linear-based storytelling, if the players know there is no, like, other adventure going on, like, right now, then they feel better about their choices in whatever they're going to be going on forward with.
I'd almost say, like, you could try for, like, a hybrid situation. Maybe, like, not quite a level select, but like you go to a location and it's like, okay, now you're here, you have to stay here until you complete whatever objective you set out for yourself.
Right, but the problem is like coming across what does every player want.
Well, that's also a good reason to like talk with your players before and after the game. Like that's a thing you should just do.
I agree. I mean, if time permits, I always recommend like contacting and talking with each of your players. See what is your goal? Are you feeling okay? Is everything going in the way that you want for your campaign to go? And sometimes players won't always know the answer, but it is good to have that open conversation.
Like for it also helps if you luck out and all of your players have the exact same goal in mind, which that's kind of what's happening with my Mario GURPS set though. It's kind of funny.
Why don't you bring that up? Talk about that a little.
Oh yeah. So Mario GURPS made several custom enemies, items, even a couple advantages and skills, and a couple extra rules for like jumping on things sequentially. Basically, I have it's the same group as with the Pokemon Trainer United game. They've got there's a spear toad, there's a Goomba that he's literally just a Goomba. We haven't quite decided what he's going to do, but I think he's leaning towards being more of a Trapmaster kind of character. And then a Shy Guy game show host type character. He's so far he's been the ranged character, so that's been interesting.
That is very interesting.
Yeah. It started as a more or less pick where you go, but I did start them on an island, more or less. So it's like you can decide where you're going, but like now you've heard of this MacGuffin, you know that you want to go seek it out, and then from there I let them decide. And as it happens, they all decided, well, these are all no-nonsense characters that all want to go directly towards the goal as much as possible. So, unless I give them a reason to stick around, they're going to be heading off to the next area.
I mean, that's awesome. I know you've been working on that that campaign for a while now. We came up with the general concept of it, like back when we were doing the GURPS, when we did the Mario Point Buy episode. So to see that you actually like developed it into, I remember being there and like working on it a good chunk. But I'm glad that you have like people to like play that on.
Yeah. Whenever we hit on a good character concept, theme concept, setting concept to try to convert to GURPS, and like I have the spare time, it's like, oh, I can do that. I can make that.
Fantastic. But yeah, I just think in terms of open world adventures, just to boil it down for your GMs out there, I'd recommend try to thin up your adventure to make it absolutely clear that this is the adventure you want for your players. And if you want to be a little more open-ended, you have to be open in conversation with every single one of them. And try to make sure that like any form of compromise is agreed upon by everyone and not as an emotional stake against the others.
With regards to notes, like bullet points, write good bullet points so you can improvise off of that.
Oh, absolutely. But just remember, if an open world adventure just flops and fails, don't be discouraged. It happens. Lots of campaigns like that tend to just die off because people start to not be enjoying it as much, and that's not necessarily your fault. It could be any amount of things. It could literally be a dice roll's fault, and then everyone's just like, well, shoot, this is what we have to live with now.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, I think it's time for your topic now, Jolly. Would you like to go ahead?
Alright, yeah, my topic was how to handle character advancement in long campaigns. Now, notably, you might not have played a long campaign. Maybe you've only played like campaigns that last like, I don't know, 2 or 5, 10 sessions. But in a long campaign, it's a real question of how quickly do you want your characters to advance, because that too affects the overall time of the campaign, as well as how much you have to balance the encounters going forward.
Yeah, exactly. I think, honestly, my real main long campaign that I was ever a part of was, was it Pathfinder? I think it was Pathfinder 1 with my good friend Will. And I was just a simple bard, level 1 bard, who decided he would never try to use his magic to, like, gain advantage over anyone, per se, but try to just make everyone's life just a little bit better. His name was Fleet the Bard. And by the end of the campaign, he was a god with multiple wives. Bear in mind, he married early on in the campaign, and his wife wanted other wives. Not by his choice. But he was down for whatever. But he was a god, literal in the sense of joyful noise. And it's interesting to see how far that grows over time. And I think that's where a lot of players want. They want their weak, very simple character to become a god of blank.
Yeah, I haven't really gotten to play any high-level long campaigns. Like the longest campaign that I've been in, this was the D&D 5e. It ended because we started rotating GMs, but essentially it lasted for about 3 or 4 arcs, but we never really got very high level. I think we ended up around level 6 or 7, I want to say. I went from being just a juggler that happened to have dragon blood because he had married a dragon who had been killed earlier in the backstory, and he was looking for the killers, and then we never really got to explore the whole of his or any of the characters' motivations very long, but it did last for multiple months. About every arc, we could expect a level up or two. It was a good campaign, but it really comes down to you're either going to level up very quickly or you're going to level up very slowly, and that will determine how heavy the campaign's encounters get. Like, we had relatively simple encounters. To be fair, these were a bunch of players, two of which were really good at gaming the system. We handcuffed a young green dragon as she was escaping and managed to capture a character that wasn't supposed to be caught. That was really funny. So even though we didn't get to high levels, it was a long enough campaign. We still had some very memorable moments. Like, we fought the hag in the swamps, and we managed to lock her down very well just by careful character placement. We ended off sneaking into a giant orc stronghold, and we did that by sneaking over the walls while also causing a massive explosion in their camps outside.
Fantastic.
Yeah, lots of cool stuff there.
In terms of long campaigns, I think one of the biggest problems is early middle section of the campaign, where it tends to lag down and be slowed a bit. Unless you have a good story plot hook, it really is hard to keep interest long enough during that time.
Yeah, you gotta make sure the characters have at least something of a goal before you reach, I would say, session 3. Within the first 2 sessions, they should have an idea of where do they want to go first? What is their first primary goal?
Well, not just primary goal. I would have to say it's bear in mind, that's around the time period where players know they're still very much weak, and they realize how long it's going to be till they get, anything super useful.
Oh, no, don't get me wrong. When I say primary goal, I'm not saying, oh, let's go take on the Demon Lord or something. I'm talking okay, here is our first major hurdle to a current existence and or whatever we want to do today. Let's go do that first. I want to get more money, so let's go fight some bandits or monsters or something. Anything to get the ball rolling, basically.
I tend to find, the best way to keep long campaigns just generally going is have a campaign where there are multiple, levels of, something to deal with. It's not, it's freeform, the open world, conversation as before, but there's not just one major bad guy to face against, but you have, I like to do, the rogues gallery or the army generals, if you will, to fight against, because
good old shonen battle anime tropes, they work for a reason.
Yeah, there's, a team that you have to face against that have their own unique path in the world, and you have to go visit them, and you want to give the player that knowledge early on that there are those people out there. Tell them there is the evil demon lord. Alright, folks, so what might seem like just a weird cut in the middle of my sentence there is a whole week since recording. So to put simply, you might have heard maybe in the background, I'm not for sure how the editing will sound, I had a massive thunderstorm last week when we were trying to record this, and it made it impossible to continue. In fact, my internet cut out, my computer still was on recording. I don't know how, but it managed to survive despite power outage. Yeah, so we're going to just move forward since that was pretty much the end of the topic there. Do you have anything else you want to bring up, Jolly, about that?
Not that I can remember since the last time we recorded it.
Yeah, it doesn't help that we kind of mostly... we listened to the audio, but we're I don't remember.
Train of thoughts and all that.
So we're going to go on to questions.
Alright, community questions.
So we got some community questions. if you have any questions that you want us to answer, both in a general GURPS setting or just tabletop in general, send us a comment in the video, in the podcast, and we will go over it. Nick from Michigan asked, why?
Why what?
Exactly. Alright, we're moving on. Nick is actually our one of our friends. I asked him, hey, do you have any GURPS questions? And he said, why? So, there's the question, and there's the answer.
Alright.
Yeah, go ahead.
Alright, so next we have a question from Joshua Mannon from our YouTube comments. I'm going to paraphrase this because it's kind of long, but it seems like the gist of the question was more or less how to properly fit a setting into GURPS, or how to modify GURPS to fit a setting, because like they talked a lot about like how they want to try to make the setting make sense within the rules of GURPS without like making it too crazy.
Yeah, I mean, the general rule of thumb of, like, how to make any campaign fit into a story that's already been, like, done, is a tough one to say, because I am in the personal camp that you should be telling a new story, even if it's in a world familiar with everybody. To just tread over, in this case, Halo, to tread over exactly what happened in Halo games, I tend to have problems with, because if a single dice roll does not come out the proper way and some, like an important character dies, for example.
Now you've got a butterfly effect, and now you gotta explain, okay, how does that affect the entirety of the story from here on out, because this guy's now out of the picture.
Yeah, now that important MacGuffin character is out, who's gonna take care of this topic? Who are you just gonna bring up like a former cousin or an older brother to fill in the role? Then that feels weird, and people don't like that.
I mean, that could become the campaign, trying to fill their shoes, but like that's a question of do your players want to do that now? Now that they've caused a situation, are they going to pick up the pieces?
Yeah, exactly. We have to like come to an agreement on how we go forward, and that's typically harder to do. If you're going to make any like world building story, go into it as new characters in the world, or at least adjacent. If it's like a great example is like Adventure Time. You can have like an Adventure Time campaign and like be main characters in the game, in this show, but like generally it's always going to move forward in a very clean way. Like these characters probably won't die, and we won't have to worry about like certain continuity issues. But typically I like to just make new characters, have something new in the world.
Heroes of another story and all that.
Yeah, heroes of another story, but unified within the world.
Yeah.
And that's perfectly fine.
On the mechanic side of things, I would say like if you're trying to like adjust something to fit into GURPS, find something, when there's like a lot of material for GURPS, find something that's similar enough, and then just tweak the knobs until it looks like it's okay. You might need to playtest a bit if you have a spare time and someone that's willing to sit there with you. But that's about basically how you can convert nearly anything into GURPS if you have enough time for it.
And if you always have like questions of like, well, this character has like this cool special attack, how do I translate it? One of the easiest ways to translate an attack that some character had a special ability, look for innate attack.
Yeah. Innate attack is a very blanket for any kind of energy or even physical stuff if you give it the right damage modifiers.
Yeah, exactly. You could literally just make almost freaking anything with just innate attack and just literally bullshit the rest.
Yeah, innate attack, afflictions, anything like that will go a
curses.
Long way with that.
Yeah. There's a lot of options there. Honestly, take a look at like also just the magic in general, because Magic and Powers books typically have like great coverage of a lot of that stuff if necessary. And don't be afraid of using gadgeteering and gizmos to like get over some hurdles. Just have some random MacGuffin item will always solve major issues in terms of translating over.
Yeah.
Just yeah. I don't know what more I could really go into in terms of mechanics wise on that. Reddit user, yeah, we decided to go to Reddit. Bear in mind that when I got these questions, this is before Reddit kind of fell apart. So, anyway, besides that, Reddit user DC Toms on r/GURPS asks, "Do I need martial arts for a gritty post-apocalyptic game?"
I'm kind of 50-50 on this. Like, it makes sense. It's a baseline how to fight that anyone can figure out with as long as they have an able body. But then it's like, well, you're still going to have guns, or if it's a magical apocalypse, there's probably still going to be someone with some kind of spells. So it's really just a question of how well can you balance encounters around someone that wants to go up and hit things.
Right. Let me actually go into the full depth of the question on Reddit.
Yeah.
Hi, I hope to set up a fairly gritty and crunchy post-apocalyptic campaign. I picked up tactical shooting, but since I don't plan on including any ninjas or judo specialists, etc., I was thinking I could skip martial arts. But from reading the other stuff, it sounds like martial arts covers quite a bit more than, martial arts. And that would be a good use for any campaign seeking realistic close campaign.
Close combat.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't think it's necessary if the whole world is not 100% built around the martial arts. I find that it's a good book, don't get me wrong, like, use it if you want to, but in my personal opinion, simple judo skill or wrestling skill can handle, like, all the typical standard rules for that.
Yeah, all the stuff for technical grappling. Technical grappling is a lot of fun, but, like, yeah, they're not necessary. In general of GURPS, whatever is necessary is whatever you think will be fun to play. Beyond that, you don't need to toss in extra rules.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes players don't want those extra rules. Sometimes they do. It really depends on what the players want. If they want to go to... If you sense, like, well, they don't seem all that interested, then cut it out. Because most of the time, players that might say, I kind of might look at it, but don't really plan on building any characters in it, then don't worry about it and just focus on the basic essentials that if you got a post-apocalyptic game, you got a little bit more to worry about than do I want to add full-on martial arts into this world.
Yeah. A lot of considerations. Do you want to deal with radiation poisoning? Do you want to deal with wild magic? Do you want to deal with whatever other shenanigans you've tossed into to stir up the world?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways. I mean, infections. I mean, medicines alone in a post-apocalyptic world is going to be, like, heavy duty. I mean,
time to learn basic chemistry and an advanced chemistry.
I played, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, but it was, like, a Halloween episode that I was doing, and, like, boy, like, yeah, we were ready to cut off limbs and due to infections, like that, and it's just like, I should not have snapped. But, they were just ready to, like, cut arms and limbs off, and that's, like, what players are more afraid of and more interested in getting into.
Yeah.
So, I wouldn't really consider the martial arts to be that much of a important part to this.
It's fun if you want to add it in, but, like, it's ultimately up to what your group wants or what you think will work for your setting.
Yeah. Alright, and on to our last question of the evening, or evenings in this case. Reddit user Topaz Scepter on r/GURPS ask, what's your favorite homebrew advantage? I'm actually going to expand this one to anything in the general homebrew, traits, skills, spells, any of that, that made in GURPS.
Alright, give me a minute. I gotta open up my Mario point by stuff. Let's see.
In terms of mine, I created a skill that I personally love, and I use it quite often, to the point that my friends actually love it when I bring it up. It is called the Mosey skill. The Mosey skill is a lot like a stealth roll, like a stealth walking around, but the difference being is that you are actively like walking into something front facing towards like enemies, and you act like you belong there. You act like you know what you're doing, and yet you're going forward into their situation, and they're like, well, he obviously is not an enemy because he clearly belongs here. And it is such a great little skill that I came up with that I just love, especially the name just Mosey along.
It sounds interesting. On my end, I've of course been hammering out a bunch of Mario stuff for my Mario GURPS campaign. So I've got like an entire Toad House item shop list. I've got everything from magic scepters to hammers to all the different flowers and mushrooms. I even made like different kinds of Shy Guy masks. So there's a Sniffit mask too, and that's basically like the closest thing to a gun you're gonna find in Mario unless you go to the Olympics.
I was talking about traits, skills, and spells, not...
Oh yeah, well, there's also stuff like, I've got different hobby skills for Mario Party, karting, minigames. I've got different kinds of artillery and gunner skills for the various cannons and the bombs. And all kinds of other stuff. We use throwing art, because it just makes more sense to have one unified thing for throwing. A lot of games with Mario that throws things, like, it's very simple. He picks up the enemy, he throws it. There's nothing complex about that. He's just very strong.
Yeah. Statistical-wise, Mario's and the characters therein are, like, they don't make sense if you actually try to put them pen to paper, because then it breaks in its own universe compared to other things.
How do you jump on a bullet bill or any number of other projectiles? Well, you use parry missiles with your feet.
Yeah, I personally love the idea of parry missile is like the idea there, because it's not necessarily like defeating the bullet bill. I just think of it as deflecting.
Yeah, and of course you still have jump skill. You can attack by jumping on an enemy, and then I've even made up rules for like consecutive bounces and how to manage that if players are really good with really high jump skill.
I mean, this is all great and all, but what is your favorite homebrew of that type?
I think
that's the real question.
That's an interesting one. I think one that took me a while to get, that I think I like a lot, was the retreat into shell ability for the Koopas. Because like, I wanted to make it where the Koopas could act more like their RPG counterparts, so they weren't just walking into you to damage you. So, by taking a concentrate maneuver, a Koopa can retreat into their shell, and then on their next turn, they can roll to kick themselves without dealing damage, and it'll send them a set speed flying towards whichever direction they were aiming, and as long as they rolled well enough to aim properly. And like, as part of that, they also, of course, get damage reduction over their whole body, or damage resistance over their whole body while they're within their shell. You can still target the eyes, of course, because you can still see their eyes in there sometimes. But so the idea is you have to jump on them as they're flying at you to knock them out of the retreat into shell mode, or otherwise wait for them to pop out naturally whenever they go flying off in the distance.
Yeah, I remember playtesting the initial like concept of that, and it was like so weird having them like spin around and flip around, and it worked really fun in a way.
Yeah, it makes them much more competent and deadly compared to the Goombas, which makes sense for what the Koopa Troop is.
Yeah. Honestly, it makes like the idea of Mario like enemies actually viable against you.
Yeah. Like Goombas, they'll tag up on you and they get a bonus when they have more than two of their allies next to them. They got that pack tactic sort of thing going on. Koopas, they can just fling themselves at you. Dry Bones are immortal skeletal monsters that you have to fucking dump in lava.
Yeah, honestly, I can't wait to see like more of your Super Mario GURPS campaign, because honestly, I think that is just a really great idea and a great example of what we were talking about earlier about properly fitting a setting into GURPS, because we're not using Mario as the main character.
Yeah, I've got all kinds of different characters. We got our Toads, we got our Shy Guys. I even have a Goomba player, and he's still making do. So there's a lot of ways to take any kind of campaign in a different setting.
Sometimes taking like the major character out of a campaign or story vastly changes how the world works, and it's important to play with that. Like, how can the Mushroom Kingdom or the like defeat Bowser without Mario is a very good question.
Yeah.
So, anyway, again, if you have any questions that you want us to discuss on the show, let us know. But I think that actually wraps it up for our first episode. Hopefully I can edit this together to make it sound somewhat comprehensible.
Yeah, thanks for listening in, everyone.
We'll be trying to do this again next week in terms of recording, but I don't know what the schedule is to put these out yet. I still have to figure out time to edit them down and all that stuff. But other than that, we'll be trying to do this as regularly as possible. Thank you guys so much for watching again, and we'll see you all next time.
See ya.